Hi everybody, I'm Sebastian Pranz. I'm a professor for journalism at the Macromedia University in Stuttgart, and today I'm going to show you how to use MaxQDA, which is a standard application for qualitative research, in combination with Tableau, which is a standard application for quantitative research and visualization. I think both applications are great and do a great job. But on the other hand, the interface between them is not elaborated so well, which is why we need a third application that is called Tableau Prep Builder to actually structurize the data that comes from MaxQDA and hand it over to Tableau. Let's first take a look at the results. My colleagues Marlis Prinzing, Florian Stadel and myself, together with our students, we did a huge content analysis of more than 5,000 articles from January to April this year in order to find out how the corona crisis actually affected the news coverage in German media. All the articles had been downloaded to MaxQDA, where we did all the coding, and then in the second step we exported all the results to Tableau as a data set, so in order to be able to run those beautiful visualizations. So this, for example, shows the actual impact of the corona crisis on the news coverage in Germany, here peaking the first time at the 10th of March. Or here you can see that most of the content that we analyzed was actually news-related content. And this is also a very nice piece that shows the impact the WHO or the RKI have on the media agenda setting of German news media. So if you know Tableau, then you know that all those visualizations are fully responsive. They can be embedded into a website, they're interactive. So all those sorts of things that are not possible with MaxQDA, of course. So the question is, how can we get the data from MaxQDA to Tableau? Let's just take a short look at the home screen of MaxQDA, because I'm sure that you're familiar with this program. This is the actually article view where you're doing all the highlighting and the coding. So for example, I can highlight the section here and say, okay, this article is part of the foreign desk or whatever. On the left side, you have the code book. And if you make projects with several researchers and especially students, make sure that they use the same version of the code book so that there are no typos or additional blanks in the naming of the codes, because otherwise you would run into problems when you build a structured data set in the next step. Another question that we had to answer is, how can we include the actual date of the published article? For example, here this is the 6th of January. So the only way we found out to do so is to actually create a folder here in this folder section for every day in our sample. And this way we could actually export the name of the folder and turn it later on into a date. MaxQDA has powerful visual tools for sure, but we wanted to build our own visualization, so we just exported the file or the project as an Excel file. So let's do this and take a look at the results. So MaxQDA provides us with a project summary. Here at the first spread, 2,572 coded segments, quite impressive. I think this is Spiegel Online, so the biggest newspaper in our sample. We have a list of the documents that might be interesting, for example, to see how many articles were published every day. But what we are interested in is this list here, which is the data set of all the coded segments. So here on the left side, you have the document name, which is very important to clearly identify the document that was coded. Then in the second column, you have the code. For example, here you see that the section that has been coded is economy. In the segment section, you see what's actually behind the code. That's important, for example, if you want to use like anchor examples. But in our case, it was not so important to have this. What we were interested in was the date, of course, the publishing date. And the only thing that MaxQDA provides us with is the date when the file was created. So this doesn't tell us anything about the publishing date, of course. But we were smart enough, as I showed you earlier here, to create document sets or document folders. And the name of the folder here is handed to this column called document group. So this is the actual column that we're going to use when we want to find out how many articles have been published on which day. One problem that we had when we exported the data from MaxQDA was that the dataset was already aggregated. So let me show you, for example, here we have the code of the section, and we have different sub codes here. And MaxQDA merges those information into one cell. So on the left hand here we have the section again, then we have a delimiter, which is a backspace, and then comes the subsection. So we need to find a way to split this information into two different columns in order to be able to do calculations, count distinct, or whatever you want to come up with. And that's our next step, data cleansing. For this I use a program, an application by Tableau, which is called Tableau Prep Builder, and it's maybe the easiest way of do data cleansing if you're not familiar with Python. So Prep Builder provides you with a visual way of building scripts that you can actually build, order, and then run through all your data. So let me show you what we've done here in order to create a structured data set we could use in Tableau. So let's take a look at how Prep Builder works. In the main section of the screen you have this kind of information flow, the flow chart. Every step is one action that you do with your data. You can join the data, further work on it, and then in the end you have one result here, and if you press the play button it will run through the whole script and provide you with a structured data set. So this is a very nice way. Once you build your workflow, you can use it for all the data that comes from MaxQDA. In our case, for example, we had like maybe 10 different data sets from different groups. They were all structured in the same way, so I could run the very same steps on them to clean them, which is of course a very important advantage. So what did we do actually to clean the data? First of all, as I've told you earlier, we needed to get rid of this merged code here. So here you can see that, for example, I can easily create a new field, and this new field splits the code section here and uses the backslash as a delimiter. So just a very short snippet of code that kind of gives me a new field that has a very clean and perfectly looking data set of the actual codes. So what's on the left side here. And we did this the second time with the right side of the slash to provide me with another column that has the actual subcodes. So you see, it's just two simple calculated fields here that help me to clean the mess that we have here from the data set. Another powerful feature that Prep Builder gives me is to filter my data. You see, for example, here that I have my different codes and the subcodes, but they're still stored in one column. So what I want to do is to provide them or to separate them over different columns. And this can be done by filtering. I just use the first step here, click on the plus button, create a new step, and then I can filter the data. For example, here is the regional reference of every coded article. And you see that I just filtered that out by using a search string that just shows the specific criteria I'm looking for. And so we create a new version of the data set that has only the regional reference here and the subcoding. So you see that's a very important step in cleaning your data and structuring your data. So the last thing, the last issue I'm going to show you is data granulation. MaxQDA exports a data set that has one row for each code that has been provided, which makes totally sense, of course, from the view of coding, but maybe it doesn't make sense if you're interested in something else, like for example, the question how many articles have been published at one specific date. So you see, for example, that the article Coronavirus Ausbruch has actually 3 rows of data, which means that there are 3 different codes attached to this article. So if we want to count the actual articles, this table set is not too helpful because it has many rows, but we know that this is not the specific number of articles that had been published. So what Prep Builder does here is to automatically provide a count distinct that actually counts all the distinct file names that we have here, which is 839. So this is a very important feature that helps me to get an idea of how many articles are actually in my sample. I can check this with MaxQDA and see that make sure that I don't lose anything between the different steps. So just to give you an overview on the workflow, we split the data, as I've told you before. We rejoin it to create then a table that is nicely structured. We have 1 column for each code. We have 1 column for the medium, in this case it's Spiegel Online. We have a column for the date, 121 days in our sample, which is correct. And you see that Prep Builder already shows me or gives me an insight in the data. Here I can see, for example, that the coverage is increasing in March. And once I've come up with this workflow, I can just hit the play button here and create a hyperfile or a CSV file that I can use in the final step, which is Tableau desktop. So once we have collected all the data from all the different student groups, joined the data, cleaned it in Prep Builder, and created an entire database that's connected to Tableau, we can start playing around with that. So, for example, create a new spreadsheet, take the date of the actual article and the number of published articles. We have to break that down, of course, to a day view. Here you see I still have 0 values that I can filter out by using the document name. Okay, so this is the first preview of my data of the overall number of articles that have been published in this time frame. Then I can use, for example, the medium on the color, and I get a more specific preview of the data. So once we're finished with that, we can publish the data at Tableau Public, where it is openly accessible. Can then use, for example, the code to embed in our own website using WordPress. So this is the actual code that comes from Tableau, and create our own data story, which includes fully editable and fully interactive data sets. Thanks so much.